Commander Sarah Chen stared out at the endless stars from the bridge of the UES Prometheus. The human ship was small compared to the massive vessels of other alien races, but it was home to her and her crew of 43. They had been flying supply runs to the outer rim for 6 months now, carrying food and medicine to remote colonies that the bigger ships couldn't be bothered with. Sarah had joined the Earth Space Service 15 years ago, back when humanity first made contact with the Galactic Confederation. She remembered the excitement on Earth when the aliens arrived. Finally, humans would join the great community of spacefaring races. They would explore the galaxy together, share knowledge, and build a better future for everyone. The reality had been different. Much different. The aliens were polite enough, but they treated humans like children. Earth was given the worst jobs: mining asteroids, cleaning space stations, and delivering supplies to forgotten worlds. Human ships were only allowed in quiet sectors where nothing important ever happened. When Sarah asked why, the alien officials always gave the same answer. Your species is too young, too primitive. Perhaps in a few hundred years you will be ready for real responsibility. It frustrated Sarah, but she tried to make the best of it. At least she was among the stars. Her communications officer, Lieutenant James Morrison, looked up from his console. "Commander, I'm picking up something strange. It's very faint, but it sounds like a distress call." Sarah walked over to his station. "Where's it coming from?" "The Kepler 442 system. That's about 6 light years off our current course." Morrison frowned at his readings. "But that's weird. According to our charts, that system is home to the Zilani. They're peaceful farmers. They've never had any trouble before." The Zilani were one of the few alien races that actually seemed to like humans. They were tall, thin beings with green skin and large eyes. They spent their time growing food, making art, and writing poetry. Sarah had met a few of them at space stations, and they were always kind and curious about human culture. "Put it on speakers," Sarah ordered. The bridge filled with static. Then a voice came through, weak and desperate. The universal translator made it sound human, but Sarah could hear the alien accent underneath. "This is Elder Kethvar of New Garden Colony. If anyone can hear this, please help us. The Devourers have come. They're taking our children. They're taking everyone. Our defense ships are destroyed. We have maybe hours before—" The signal turned to static, then went silent. Morrison tried to clean up the signal, but there was nothing more. "That's all we got, Commander. The transmission cut off about 30 minutes ago." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She had never heard of the Devourers before, but the terror in the Zilani's voice was real. "What do we know about this system?" Her science officer, Dr. Marcus Webb, pulled up the information on the main screen. Kepler 442b is a garden world with about 12 million Zilani. 3 major cities, hundreds of smaller farming communities. They have no military to speak of. Just a few patrol ships for asteroid monitoring. Very peaceful people. "And you said they mentioned children being taken?" Sarah asked. "Yes, Commander. That's unusual. Most conflicts in this part of the galaxy follow the Harmony Doctrine. Civilians aren't targeted, especially not children. The Harmony Doctrine was the Confederation's way of war. Battles were fought between military forces only. Civilians were protected. When one side was clearly losing, they would surrender, and the winner would accept. It kept wars from getting too destructive or lasting too long. Every member species followed these rules. Sarah made a decision that would change everything. Morrison set course for Kepler 442, maximum speed. Her first officer, Commander Torres, looked surprised. "Sarah, that's way off our route. We're supposed to deliver these medical supplies to Station Omega by next week." "The medical supplies can wait. People are dying. But our orders are to provide humanitarian aid where needed. Those people asked for help." Sarah sat down in the captain's chair. "Besides, by the time we report this to Confederation Command and they decide what to do, it'll be too late. We're the only ship close enough to help." Torres didn't look happy, but he nodded. "Yes, Commander. ETA to Kepler 442 is 18 hours at maximum speed." As the Prometheus jumped to faster-than-light travel, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The galaxy had been peaceful for over 200 years. The Confederation made sure of that. Wars were small, limited affairs that ended quickly. Nobody had heard of mass attacks on civilian populations in decades. Dr. Webb came to stand beside her chair. "Commander, I've been thinking about that transmission. The Zilani mentioned Devourers. I've never heard of any species by that name in the Confederation database." Maybe they're from outside Confederation space? Maybe. But if they are, what are they doing this far into our territory? And why target a peaceful farming world? Sarah didn't have answers, but she intended to find them. The next 18 hours felt like the longest of Sarah's life. The crew ran checks on their weapon systems, even though the Prometheus wasn't really a warship. It had basic shields and a few defensive guns, but it was built for exploration and supply runs, not combat. When they finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, the sight that greeted them made Sarah's blood run cold. "My God," whispered Morrison. 3 massive ships hung in orbit around the green and blue world below. They were unlike anything in the Confederation database. Dark, angular vessels that looked more like insects than spacecraft. Smaller ships moved between them and the planet's surface like worker ants. But it was the planet itself that made Sarah feel sick. Instead of the lush green world shown in the database, Kepler 442b was marked with brown and black scars. Fires burned across entire continents. The blue oceans were stained with smoke and ash. "Are we detecting any Zilani ships?" Sarah asked quietly. Morrison ran his scans. "Negative, Commander. I'm picking up debris that might be from their defense fleet, but there's not much left." Dr. Webb's face was pale as he studied the readings from his science station. "Commander, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the surface. It looks like they're using some kind of harvesting equipment." "Harvesting what?" Webb hesitated. "I'm not sure I want to know." Sarah stood up. "Red alert. Battle stations. Morrison, try to get closer without being detected. I want to know what those ships are doing." As the Prometheus moved carefully into the system, hiding behind asteroids and using passive sensors, the picture became clearer. The alien ships weren't just attacking the planet. They were systematically stripping it of everything valuable. Not just minerals and resources, but the population itself. "Commander." Morrison's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm picking up life signs on those big ships. Thousands of them. They're in holding areas." Sarah felt a rage building inside her that she had never experienced before. These aliens, whoever they were, weren't following any rules of war. They were treating the Zilani like animals to be rounded up and processed. "Can we get close enough to scan one of those ships without being detected? Maybe if we're very careful." "Do it." What they found in the next hour would haunt Sarah for the rest of her life. The alien ships contained massive holding facilities where Zilani were kept in cages, barely large enough for them to stand. Children were separated from their parents. The weak and elderly were. Sarah forced herself not to think about what happened to them. But worse than the cruelty was the efficiency. This wasn't random violence. These devourers had done this before. Many times. They had turned genocide into an industrial process, and according to the data they intercepted, this was just the beginning. The core worlds of the Confederation, including Earth, were next on their list. Sarah made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. "Morrison, send a message to Earth. Priority Alpha. Tell them the Harmony Doctrine just died." Sarah Chen stared at the tactical display as the Prometheus drifted silently through the asteroid field. For 6 hours they had watched the Devourer ships work with mechanical precision. The aliens moved like a well-oiled machine, stripping everything of value from the dying world below. Dr. Webb looked up from his science station, his face gray. "Commander, I've analyzed the data we collected from their transmissions. These aren't raiders or conquerors. They're harvesters." "What do you mean?" Webb pulled up a holographic display showing the Devourer operations. "Look at this. They're not taking random prisoners. They're sorting the Zilani by age, health, and genetic markers. The young and healthy go to one ship. The elderly and sick go to another. Children are kept separately from adults." Commander Torres leaned forward. "That's impossible. No civilized species would." "They're not civilized by our standards," Webb interrupted. "According to the communication patterns I've decoded, they've done this before. Many times. There are references to at least 12 other worlds in their data logs." Sarah felt her hands clench into fists. 12 other worlds. How many people? Based on the population data, approximately 60 million sentient beings, all disappeared without a trace. The bridge fell silent. Morrison broke the quiet with a whisper. "No wonder no one knew about them. They don't leave witnesses." Webb nodded grimly. "That's exactly right. They wipe out entire species so completely that there's no one left to report what happened." The Confederation probably thinks those worlds just went silent due to natural disasters or equipment failures. Sarah stood up and walked to the main view screen. The blue and green world below was barely recognizable. Black smoke rose from a dozen burning cities. How many Zilani are still alive down there? Sensors show about 3,000 life signs still on the planet. Most are in what appear to be processing centers near the major cities. The rest... Webb's voice trailed off. The rest are already on those ships, Sarah finished. Yes, Commander. Approximately 8,000 Zilani are being held in the Devourer vessels. Torres stood up. Sarah, we have to report this to Confederation Command immediately. They need to mobilize the fleet. With what? The nearest Confederation base is 40 light years away. By the time they organize a response force and travel here, there won't be anyone left to save. But we can't take on 3 capital ships with a supply vessel. Sarah turned to face her crew. These were good people who had signed up to explore the galaxy and help others. None of them had expected to face something like this. But looking at their faces, she saw something that surprised her. Anger. The same cold rage that was burning in her own chest. You're right, Torres. We can't win a direct fight, but we might be able to save some of those people. Dr. Webb pulled up a new display. Commander, I've been studying their ship designs. The Devourers use a modular construction. Each vessel is made up of separate sections connected by docking ports. If we could disable one of those connections, Morrison understood immediately. We could separate a section containing prisoners. Exactly. The question is whether we can do it without getting the whole ship blown to pieces. Sarah studied the tactical display. It was insane. Suicidal. But the alternative was watching 11,000 innocent people die while they ran away to report it. What's the status of our weapon systems? Lieutenant Hayes, their weapons officer, looked up from his console. We have 4 plasma cannons and a basic missile system. Nothing that could seriously damage one of those big ships. We don't need to destroy them. We just need to cut some connections and cause enough confusion to get away. Sarah sat back down in the captain's chair. Here's what we're going to do. The plan was simple and desperate. The Prometheus would approach the closest Devourer ship using an asteroid as cover. They would fire everything they had at the docking ports, connecting the prisoner section to the main vessel. Then they would grab the separated section with their tractor beam and run. The biggest problem, Webb explained, is that we don't know how the life support works in that section. If we cut it off from the main ship, the prisoners might suffocate before we can get them to safety. We'll have to risk it, Sarah decided. They're going to die anyway if we don't try. As the Prometheus moved into position, Sarah opened a channel to the entire crew. All hands, this is the commander. What we're about to do goes against everything we've been taught about Confederation military doctrine. We're going to attack a superior force without authorization and probably start an interstellar incident. Anyone who wants to object can do so now. She waited, but no one spoke. I take that as a vote of confidence. Weapons, prepare to fire on my command. The supply ship emerged from behind the asteroid like an angry hornet. The Devourer vessel was massive, at least 10 times the size of the Prometheus, but they had achieved complete surprise. The first volley of plasma fire struck exactly where Webb had predicted, severing 2 of the 3 docking connections holding the prisoner section. Direct hit, Hayes shouted. The section is breaking away. But the Devourers were fast to respond. Energy beams lanced out from the big ship, striking the Prometheus's shields. The smaller ship shook under the impact, shields down to 60%. Torres reported, fire again. Target the remaining connection. The second volley finished the job. The prison section broke completely free from the main ship, spinning slowly in space. Sarah could see hundreds of small viewing ports along its hull, and she wondered how many terrified faces were looking out at them. Tractor beam lock on. Maximum power. The beam reached out and grabbed the separated section just as more energy fire from the Devourer ship hammered their shields. Shields at 30%. We need to get out of here. Helm full reverse. Get us back to the asteroid field. As the Prometheus retreated, dragging its prize behind it, the Devourer ships began to move. All 3 vessels turned toward the fleeing human ship, their weapons charging. Commander, Morrison said urgently. They're powering up some kind of massive weapon array. Energy readings are off the charts. Sarah looked at the tactical display. They were still 15 minutes away from the edge of the system, where they could safely jump to faster-than-light speed. The prisoner section they were towing would slow them down even more. Can we separate some of the Prometheus's systems to gain speed? We could jettison the cargo holds, Torres suggested. That would reduce our mass by about 20%. Do it. The medical supplies they had been carrying to Station Omega scattered into space as the ship's cargo holds separated. It felt wrong to waste resources that could save lives, but Sarah knew it wouldn't matter if they were all dead. The Prometheus accelerated, but the Devourer ships were gaining. Sarah watched the tactical display and realized they weren't going to make it. The enemy vessels were faster and more powerful. In 10 minutes, they would be in range to use those massive weapons Morrison had detected. That's when something unexpected happened. As the human ship fled through the asteroid field, one of the pursuing Devourer vessels struck a large asteroid that had been knocked out of orbit by the earlier battle. The impact sent the alien ship spinning, causing it to collide with one of its companions. Their pilots aren't used to fighting in asteroid fields, Webb observed. They're designed for open space operations. Sarah smiled grimly. Then let's give them a tour of our neighborhood. What followed was a deadly game of cat and mouse among the slowly tumbling rocks. The Prometheus was smaller and more maneuverable than the Devourer ships, and Sarah's crew knew how to use that advantage. They led their pursuers on a winding chase through the densest part of the asteroid field, using the rocks as cover and causing 2 more collisions. By the time they reached the edge of the system, only one Devourer ship was still in pursuit, and it was badly damaged. Jumped to faster than light speed, course for Earth, maximum velocity. As the stars stretched into lines around them, Sarah finally allowed herself to breathe. They had done it. They had actually rescued prisoners from an enemy that no one had even known existed. But as Dr. Webb began analyzing the data they had collected, the victory began to feel hollow. Commander, I've decoded more of their communications. The Devourer fleet here isn't their main force. This is just a scouting operation. What do you mean? Webb's face was pale. Their main invasion fleet is already on its way to the core worlds. According to this timeline, they'll reach the Confederation capital in 6 months. Sarah stared at the star-filled view screen. They had saved 800 Zilani, but 67 billion people in the core systems were about to face the same fate. Morrison, compose a message to Earth Command. Tell them the galaxy is about to discover that some enemies can't be negotiated with. The rescued Zilani huddled in the Prometheus's cargo bay, wrapped in emergency blankets and trying to process what had happened to their world. Sarah walked among them, offering what comfort she could through the universal translator. Many were injured. All were traumatized, but they were alive. Elder Kethvar, the same Zilani who had sent the distress call, approached Sarah with slow, careful steps. His green skin was marked with bruises and one of his large eyes was swollen shut, but his voice was steady. Commander Chen, my people owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You risked everything to save us. Sarah shook her head. We did what anyone should do. I'm just sorry we couldn't save more. You saved who you could, but I must ask you something that troubles me greatly. The Elder's remaining eye studied Sarah's face. Your species fights differently than any we have encountered. The way you moved through the asteroid field, the precision of your attack, the willingness to sacrifice your cargo to save strangers. This is not how Confederation forces operate. Before Sarah could answer, Dr. Webb's voice came over the intercom. Commander Chen to the bridge immediately. We have a situation. Sarah excused herself and hurried to the bridge where she found her crew gathered around Webb's science station. The doctor's face was tense with excitement and worry. Commander, while you were checking on the refugees, I had Aristotle analyze the Devourer data more thoroughly. The AI found something significant. Aristotle was the ship's artificial intelligence designed to help with navigation and research. The AI's voice was calm and professional as always, but Sarah detected something different in its tone. Commander Chen, in processing the alien communications, I found references to several extinct species that the Devourers have encountered. One of those references led me to cross-check with classified Earth archives that I was not previously aware I had access to. Sarah frowned. What archives? Military historical records that were sealed when Earth joined the Confederation 30 years ago. However, the current crisis has automatically triggered emergency protocols, granting me access to previously restricted information. The main screen flickered to life, showing documents that Sarah had never seen before. Classification stamps in multiple languages mark them as beyond top secret. According to these records, Aristotle continued. Humanity's first contact with the Galactic Confederation was not the peaceful discovery that was reported to the public. Earth was recruited after Confederation monitoring stations detected the development of certain military technologies. Commander Torres leaned forward. What kind of technologies? Weapon systems that the Confederation classified as unacceptably destabilizing to galactic peace. The invitation to join the Confederation was extended immediately, along with strict limitations on human military development. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Are you saying we were forced to join? Not forced, Commander, but the alternative was quarantine or preemptive military action. The Confederation was concerned about human military doctrine. Dr. Webb pulled up another document. Look at this. It's a psychological evaluation of human warfare tactics written by Confederation analysts. They describe human military thinking as uniquely ruthless and incompatible with civilized conflict resolution. Sarah read the document with growing amazement. The aliens had studied human history in detail, from ancient warfare to World War II, to the regional conflicts of the early 21st century. Their conclusion was clear. Humans fought wars differently than any other known species. They were particularly concerned, Aristotle noted, with human concepts of total war and unconditional surrender. Most galactic conflicts are resolved when one side gains a clear advantage and the other chooses to yield. Humans, however, have a documented tendency to continue fighting until the enemy is completely unable to continue resistance. Morrison looked up from his station. That's why they keep us on supply runs and patrol duty. They're afraid of what we might do in a real war. Aristotle displayed another file. There is more, Commander. These archives contain references to something called Protocol Omega, a military response plan that was developed but never implemented. It appears to be classified at a level beyond even these emergency authorizations. Before Sarah could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Morrison's hands flew over his communications console. Commander, I'm receiving a priority transmission from Earth. It's Admiral Harrison himself. Admiral Harrison appeared on the screen, his weathered face grave. Behind him, Sarah could see the bustling activity of Earth's military command center. Commander Chen, your report about the Devourer threat has been confirmed by deep space monitoring stations. We're tracking a massive fleet moving toward the core worlds. The Confederation Council has been notified, but their response time is inadequate. Sarah nodded. What are our orders, sir? You're to proceed immediately to Titan Station with your rescued prisoners. They'll need to be debriefed about Devourer capabilities. But first I need to ask you something directly, Commander. In your professional opinion, can this threat be stopped using conventional Confederation military doctrine? Sarah thought about the mechanical efficiency she had witnessed at Kepler 442. The systematic extermination of an entire species. The complete disregard for any rules of war. No, sir. These aren't rational actors who will negotiate or surrender when they're losing. They're more like a natural disaster with weapons. You don't negotiate with a hurricane. Admiral Harrison nodded slowly. That's what we were afraid you'd say. Commander, I'm about to tell you something that's been classified for 3 decades. When Earth joined the Confederation, we agreed to limit our military capabilities in exchange for membership, but we never actually destroyed those capabilities. We just stored them. The screen split to show images that took Sarah's breath away. Hidden facilities throughout the solar system came to life. The asteroid belt, which she had always thought was a mining operation, revealed itself to be the largest military shipyard in human history. Mars wasn't just a colony, it was a fortress world bristling with weapons that could crack planets. My God, whispered Torres. How long has this been hidden? Since the day we joined the Confederation, Harrison replied. We knew that peaceful cooperation was the ideal, but we also knew that someday we might face something that couldn't be reasoned with. That day has come. Sarah stared at the images of massive warships emerging from hidden docks, their hulls marked with symbols she recognized from ancient human military forces. What exactly are we talking about here, Admiral? We're talking about reminding the galaxy why the Confederation was so eager to keep us contained in the first place, Commander. We're going to show them what humans do when someone threatens our friends. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Elder Kethavar had been listening from the doorway, and his translator made his voice sound almost like a whisper. Commander Chen, my species has studied war as a philosophical concept for centuries. We understand the necessity of violence in the abstract, but what you describe, this is not war as we know it. Sarah turned to face the Zilani elder. What we're describing is what humans call total war. It means we don't just fight to win a battle or gain territory. We fight to make sure the enemy can never threaten anyone again. And your people are capable of this. Dr. Webb answered before Sarah could speak. Elder Kethvar, humans spent most of their history fighting each other. We got very good at it, maybe too good. When we learned there were other species in the galaxy, we thought we could put all that behind us and become peaceful explorers. But you cannot escape what you are, the elder observed. Sarah nodded grimly. No, we can't, and right now I'm grateful for that. Because someone needs to stop the Devourers, and the Confederation's way of fighting clearly isn't going to work. Aristotle's voice cut through the conversation. Commander, I am receiving new data about Protocol Omega. It appears to be a complete restructuring of human military forces from defensive to aggressively preemptive. What does that mean exactly? It means, Commander, that humanity is about to remind the galaxy that there's a difference between being peaceful and being harmless. We have been peaceful by choice, but harmless. We have never been harmless. As the Prometheus continued toward Earth, Sarah looked out at the stars and wondered what they were about to unleash. The Devourers had made one critical mistake. They had attacked the friends of the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and that species was done playing by other people's rules. 3 days after the Prometheus reached Earth, Sarah Chen stood in the war room deep beneath Geneva, watching as humanity shed 30 years of careful disguise. The room buzzed with activity as military personnel worked at stations she had never known existed. The screens around the room showed a view of human space that was completely different from what she had believed her entire life. Admiral David Chen, Sarah's older brother, approached with a grim expression. David had supposedly been working on deep space exploration for the past decade. Now Sarah understood what that really meant. Little sister, he said, using the childhood nickname that seemed strange in this military setting. I wish we were meeting under different circumstances. Sarah looked around the room at the displays showing massive fleets emerging from hidden bases.
David, how long has all this been secret?
Since the beginning. When the Confederation made first contact, they didn't come in peace. They came to investigate what their deep space monitors had detected, weapons tests that scared them. David gestured to a historical display. Humanity was 6 months away from launching our first interstellar warfleet when they arrived. Interstellar warfleet? We had just invented faster-than-light travel. We had invented faster-than-light travel for our missiles first. The passenger ships came later. David's expression was serious. The Confederation offered us a choice: join them and agree to limit our military development, or face a preemptive strike from the combined fleets of 12 species. Sarah felt sick. So we've been prisoners this whole time? Not prisoners. Partners, but with strict rules. The Confederation genuinely wanted peace, and most of them are good people, but they were terrified of what humans might do if we were left alone to develop our military technology. General Patricia Nakamura, the head of Earth's Defense Council, stepped up to join them. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Commander Chen, your report about the Devourers has changed everything. The Confederation Council has been debating response strategies for 72 hours. They want to send a diplomatic mission to understand the Devourers' motivations and find a peaceful solution. Sarah stared at her. They want to negotiate with species that turn children into livestock? Some species find it difficult to accept that rational beings can be truly evil. Humans understand this better than most. Nakamura touched a control, and the main display showed a star map with red indicators moving toward the core worlds. The Devourer main fleet will reach the Confederation capital in 4 months. Their advanced scouts are already attacking outer colonies. David pulled up another display showing ship movements throughout human space. Sarah, I need you to understand what we're about to do. For 30 years, we've pretended to be a minor military power. We've hidden our true capabilities behind mining operations and research stations. That ends today. The screen showed the truth. Earth's solar system wasn't just humanity's home. It was the most heavily fortified space in the galaxy. The asteroid belt contained not just mining platforms, but weapons platforms capable of destroying entire fleets. Mars wasn't a peaceful colony, but a military fortress that could coordinate the defense of dozens of star systems. The Jupiter research stations are actually shipyards, David continued. They've been building warships for 3 decades. Ships designed specifically for fighting enemies who don't follow the rules of civilized warfare. Sarah watched as hundreds of vessels emerged from hidden docking bays around the gas giant. These weren't the small, lightly armed ships that the Confederation knew about. These were massive warships bristling with weapon systems she didn't recognize. What kind of weapons are those? General Nakamura answered. Technologies that the Confederation banned because they're too destructive for civilized warfare. Weapons that don't just disable enemy ships, but make sure they can never be repaired or rebuilt. Boarding systems that can take control of enemy vessels faster than their crews can surrender. And something else, David added quietly. Something we learned from studying the Devourer's methods. Sometimes the only way to stop a monster is to become something the monster fears. Sarah understood. You're talking about total war. We're talking about making sure the Devourers understand that attacking innocent people has consequences. Permanent consequences. An aide approached General Nakamura with a communication tablet. She read it quickly, then looked up with a slight smile. The Confederation Council has just issued an ultimatum to Earth. We are ordered to stand down all military preparations and submit to Confederation oversight of our response to the Devourer threat. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. They're still trying to control us while people are dying? David's expression hardened. Not anymore. General, what's our response? Nakamura touched her communication device. Admiral Thompson, this is command. Send our reply to the Confederation Council. On the main screen, a recording appeared of Admiral Thompson, the head of Earth's Space Forces. His message was simple and direct. To the Confederation Council, we thank you for your concern, but we decline your oversight. Earth will handle this threat in our own way. We suggest you evacuate your core worlds immediately, because this is going to get messy. The recording ended, and Nakamura turned to Sarah. Commander, your ship has been reassigned. You'll be joining the expeditionary force as a reconnaissance vessel. Your knowledge of Devourer tactics will be invaluable. What expeditionary force? David smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. The one that's going to find every Devourer base, every Devourer ship and every Devourer world, and make sure they never threaten anyone again. The main display changed to show a massive fleet assembling near Jupiter. Sarah counted over 300 ships, from small fast scouts to enormous dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything in the Confederation fleet. This is just the first wave, David explained. We have 12 more fleets in reserve, and our industrial capacity is now operating at wartime levels. We can build ships faster than any other species in the galaxy. Sarah watched the fleet movements with a mixture of awe and fear. David, what have we become? We've become what we always were, Sarah. We just stopped pretending to be something else. David put his hand on her shoulder. The galaxy wanted us to be peaceful explorers and merchants. We tried to be what they wanted, but some threats can't be explored or traded with. General Nakamura approached them again. Commander Chen, there's someone who wants to meet you. She led Sarah to a smaller briefing room where a figure waited in the shadows. When the lights came up, Sarah gasped. It was Elder Kethvar, but he was wearing something she had never seen before. A uniform marked with Earth military insignia. Commander Chen, I have asked to serve with your forces in the coming campaign. Sarah stared at the Zilani elder. Sir, you're a civilian. A philosopher. I was a philosopher when my world was peaceful. Now my world is ash and my people are scattered. I have learned that sometimes philosophy must give way to more practical concerns. The elder's large eyes met Sarah's. Your brother has explained to me what humanity intends to do to the Devourers. I wish to witness it. Elder, this is going to be unlike any conflict the galaxy has seen. We're not planning to capture Devourer ships or territory. We're planning to end them completely, Kethvar finished. Yes, I understand. And I approve. There are some evils that cannot be reformed or contained. They can only be stopped. David stepped forward. The elder will be serving as an advisor and observer. Other species need to understand what's happening and why. Sarah looked between her brother and the Zilani elder. And what is happening exactly? General Nakamura answered from the doorway. What's happening, Commander? is that humanity is about to remind the galaxy why the Confederation was so eager to keep us contained. We're going to show them what a species does when they've been peaceful by choice, not because they lack the ability to be anything else. On the main screen, the first human war fleet began moving toward the edge of the solar system. Their destination was the last known position of the Devourer scouts. Sarah looked at the massive ships and realized that everything was about to change. The galaxy had spent 30 years thinking humans were harmless explorers. They were about to learn the difference between choosing peace and being incapable of war. "When do we leave?" she asked. David smiled grimly. "We launch in 6 hours. Time to show the Devourers what happens when you threaten the friends of Earth." As alarms began sounding throughout the facility, calling all personnel to battle stations, Sarah realized that the galaxy was about to discover something that humanity had known for millennia. Some enemies could only be stopped by becoming something they feared more than death itself. 6 weeks after the human fleet left Earth, Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the rebuilt Prometheus, now equipped with weapons that would have been unthinkable under Confederation rules. Through the view screen, she could see the Nexus system, the staging ground where the Devourers had gathered their invasion fleet. What she saw there made her blood run cold. Over 400 Devourer ships filled the space around 3 dead worlds. These weren't the strip mining vessels they had encountered at Kepler 442. These were pure warships, each one larger than Earth's biggest dreadnoughts. And on the planets below, massive processing facilities worked day and night, preparing for the extermination of 67 billion people in the core worlds. Admiral David Chen's voice came over the fleet communication channel. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. What you see before you is evil in its purest form. These beings have murdered entire species for the simple crime of existing. Today we make sure they never do it again." Sarah looked at Elder Kethvar, who stood beside her wearing the human military uniform he had requested. The Zilani's large eyes reflected the light of the distant stars, and his voice was steady when he spoke. "Commander, I have spent my life studying the concept of justice. I never thought I would witness it on this scale." The human fleet had grown during their journey to the Nexus system. Ships from a dozen human colonies had joined them, along with vessels from other species who had lost worlds to the Devourers. Even some Confederation ships had quietly slipped away from their official orders to join the hunt, but it was still a fraction of the enemy force. The Devourers outnumbered them 3-1. Dr. Webb, now serving as the fleet's chief intelligence officer, pulled up tactical displays showing the enemy positions. "Admiral, we've confirmed that the Devourers have prisoners from at least 8 different species being held in the orbital processing stations. Total count is approximately 2 million sentient beings. Any chance of rescue?" Sarah asked. "Not if we fight this conventionally," Webb replied. "But Admiral Chen has other plans." David's image appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Sarah could see the bridge of the UES Retribution, the flagship of Earth's war fleet. The ship was massive, but it was the expression on her brother's face that truly showed how much humanity had changed. "Sarah, you're going to see things today that will probably give you nightmares for the rest of your life. What we're about to do isn't warfare as the galaxy understands it. This is extermination. David, there are still prisoners. We're going to save them. All of them. But first, we need to make sure the Devourers understand exactly what they've awakened." The human fleet moved into position around the system with precision that amazed even Sarah. These weren't the careful, measured movements of Confederation naval doctrine. This was something predatory, like sharks circling wounded prey. "All ships," David announced, "commence Operation Hellgate." What happened next would be talked about in military academies for centuries. The human ships didn't attack the Devourer fleet directly. Instead, they surrounded the entire system and activated a network of devices that Sarah had never seen before. Space itself seemed to shimmer and bend around the enemy ships. "What are those?" Elder Kethvar asked. Webb checked his readings. "Quantum field generators. They're creating a barrier around the system that prevents faster-than-light travel. Nothing can jump to hyperspace while those are active." Sarah understood immediately. "They're trapping them." "Every single one," David confirmed over the communication channel. "No escape pods. No retreat. No survivors to report back to their main fleet." The Devourer fleet began moving toward the human ships, clearly confident in their numerical superiority. That confidence lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. The human vessels opened fire with weapons that defied every treaty the Confederation had ever signed. Plasma beams that didn't just destroy enemy ships but rendered the space around them uninhabitable for decades. Missiles that could track targets through multiple hyperspace jumps. Boarding pods that could cut through enemy hulls like paper and deliver assault teams directly to the bridge. But it was the human tactics that truly terrified their enemies. The Devourers were used to opponents who fought with honor, who protected their own ships and tried to minimize casualties. Humans fought like they were willing to die as long as they took their enemies with them. Sarah watched in amazement as human ships rammed Devourer vessels, their crews sacrificing themselves to deny the enemy even a partial victory. Other ships used the wreckage of their destroyed companions as cover, turning every loss into a tactical advantage. "This isn't a battle," Elder Kethvar observed quietly. "This is an execution." The Zalani was right. Within 2 hours, the space around the Nexus system was filled with the burning wreckage of Devourer ships. But the humans weren't finished. "Admiral," Webb reported, "the enemy is requesting communication." David's expression didn't change. "Put them through." The alien voice that came over the speakers was distorted by fear and desperation. The universal translator made it sound almost human, which somehow made it worse. "Human fleet, we surrender, we yield. Take our ships, take our resources, but please stop the killing." There was a long pause before David replied. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "You're asking for mercy. That's interesting. Tell me, when the children of Kepler 442 asked for mercy, what did you tell them?" That was different. They were not our equals. Neither are you." The communication channel went dead. The human fleet resumed its systematic destruction of everything in the system. Sarah felt sick watching it, but she also felt a grim satisfaction. These beings had murdered children. They had turned genocide into an industrial process, and now they were learning what it felt like to be helpless. "Commander," Morrison called from his station, "I'm detecting movement from the processing stations on the second planet. It looks like they're trying to execute the prisoners." Sarah felt rage flood through her. "David, they're going to kill the hostages." "No, they're not." On the main screen, Sarah watched as dozens of small human ships broke away from the main fleet and dove toward the planet's surface. These weren't warships, but specialized rescue vessels that moved with impossible speed and precision. The landing forces that emerged from those ships fought with a ferocity that made the space battle look restrained. They moved through the processing facilities like an unstoppable force of nature, killing every devourer they encountered and freeing every prisoner they found. "How are they moving so fast?" Elder Kethvar asked. Webb checked his readings. "Combat stimulants, enhanced reflexes, and something called berserker protocols. They're fighting like they're not entirely human anymore. They're fighting like humans who've decided that mercy is a luxury they can't afford," Sarah corrected. The rescue operation took 6 hours. When it was finished, over 2 million prisoners had been freed, and every devourer facility on the planet had been reduced to ash. But David wasn't done. "All ships begin Phase 2. We're going to make sure the galaxy understands that this is what happens when you target innocent people." What followed was the systematic destruction of everything in the Nexus system that could ever be used to support military operations. Not just ships and weapons, but shipyards, supply depots, communication arrays, and even asteroid mining operations that could provide raw materials. When the human fleet finally left the system 3 days later, nothing remained that could support life. The Nexus system had been turned into a monument to the consequences of threatening Earth's friends. Elder Kethvar stood quietly on the bridge as they departed, watching the lifeless system fall behind them. Finally, he spoke. "Commander Chen, I have seen justice today, but I have also seen something else. I have seen what your species becomes when you decide that survival requires setting aside your humanity." Sarah nodded. "The question is whether we can find our way back to being human when this is over." "That," the Elder said softly, "will depend on whether the galaxy learns the lesson you have taught here." 6 months later, Sarah stood in the Galactic Council chambers as representatives from across the galaxy voted on humanity's new role in Confederation defense. The vote was unanimous. Earth would be granted unlimited authority to deal with existential threats to galactic civilization. But the real change wasn't political. It was in how other species looked at humans now. There was respect in their eyes, but also fear. They had learned that Earth's 30 years of peaceful cooperation had been a choice, not a limitation. As Sarah left the council chambers, she found Elder Kethvar waiting for her. He was no longer wearing a military uniform, but had returned to the simple robes of a Zalani philosopher. "Commander, I wanted to thank you one final time, not just for saving my people, but for showing the galaxy that sometimes the only way to protect the innocent is to become something that monsters fear." Sarah looked out at the stars through the station's viewing ports. Somewhere out there, the main Devourer fleet had received word of what happened at the Nexus system. According to intelligence reports, they had immediately changed course away from the core worlds. "Elder, do you think we did the right thing?" Kethvar was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it was the first time Sarah had seen him truly at peace since the rescue. "Commander, there are children alive on a dozen worlds tonight who would have been murdered if you had chosen to be merciful instead of effective. I think they would say you did exactly the right thing." As Sarah walked toward the docking bay where the Prometheus waited, she reflected on how much had changed. Humanity had revealed its true nature to the galaxy, and the galaxy had decided that sometimes having monsters on your side was better than facing them alone. The stars were the same as they had always been, but humanity's place among them was forever changed. They were no longer the junior partners in galactic civilization. They were the sword that hung over the heads of anyone who thought that innocent people made acceptable targets. And if that made them feared as much as respected, so be it. Some prices were worth paying to protect the defenseless,